Hello, friends. So we are back again with the Chandragupta Maurya, the biography section, and under which we are talking about Chandragupta Maurya, the first Indian emperor. And this is the second part of the life and times of Chandragupta. Just to recap, and in the first episode, we had spoken about the origins and the early life of Chandragupta. We had seen the Greek sources, the Puranas, the Jain and Buddhist legends, etc., on the origin of Chandragupta, and we have also seen how Chandragupta was um, taken to Takshashila by Kautilya for his further studies. So this part, the second part, would talk about Alexander's invasion of India and also the fact about what happened when Alexander retreated towards Babylon, the political scenario, political situation of India when Alexander retreated, and also would look at Chandragupta's part in leading a rebellion against the Greek occupiers. So in this uh, I have not mentioned the full details of Alexander's invasion. We'll have of course a separate video of Alexander's invasion of India in the near future, but I'll just take on few important points in uh, Alexander's invasion and his campaign and his route. Just a few tidbits here. The full parts, of course, in the near future, we will have a separate video on that. So we'll start with the Alexander's invasion of India, and it happened between May 327 to about April 325 BCE, and he conquered what we call as modern Pakistan, if we talk about India, and also parts of southern and eastern Afghanistan, which were then under Indian sphere of influence, or there's some kind of association culturally with Indian mainland. And after after subduing Persia at Gaugamela, and after defeating the Scythian tribes in modern Uzbekistan and other places, and including in Afghanistan, where he crushed the Afghan warlords of that time, who were actually Achaemenid generals. Alexander sets his sights on India. So his campaigns in India were actually a byproduct of his inquisitive nature, as well as bringing all the regions which were under the former Achaemenid Empire. So he actually, we know that 200 years before Alexander, Darius I, the Shah of Persia, he actually conquered the Indus Valley, and these areas were under Persian control for the next 160-70 years, and this area uh, was actually the richest province under Achaemenid Empire, as Herodotus tells us. This was the 20th satrapy of Achaemenid Empire, and it gave it contributed about 6,082 talents of gold to the Persian treasury, and that would mean about 1,58,000 kilos of gold every year. uh, these areas which Darius conquered in India, these areas offered a tribute of about 1,58,000 kilos of gold every year. So that tells you the economic prosperity of this region. And as far as Alexander's inquisitive nature is concerned, you'll just have to look at the world map of Hecataeus. This is the map created by Hecataeus, who was a Greek. He was a Greek historian and geographer born in about 550 BCE. And this, if I could just magnify here, you could see this is how Europeans envisioned the world, where everything was surrounded by a vast ocean. So here we have Europe, we have Libya, we have Egypt, we have Assyria, Babylon, we have Asia, and we have Persia and main cities like Susa and Babylon. And then we have India just at the easternmost part of this map. And the Greeks at the time believed that the this ocean ended somewhere near India. And Alexander was tutored by none other than Aristotle himself, who told him that this Eastern Ocean ended somewhere near India, and Alexander wanted to reach that spot where this ocean ended, so that he could be called the man who conquered the entire world. So this is the map. You could see no China, no Americas, even Africa. The full Africa is not there. But this is what the Greeks thought of the ancient world at that time. And this is important. This is the route taken by Alexander in India. You could clearly see the red marked here. This shows the passage of Alexander towards India, across the Takshashila and then kingdom of Porus onto the kingdom of Sophites, who was ruling near modern day Sialkot, and he stopped somewhere near Hydaspes River. Sorry, the Bias River, not the Hydaspes, the Bias River, and then his soldiers rebelled, so he had to go back, reach Jhelum River again, and then proceeded towards his destination towards the south and somewhere near modern Karachi, towards modern Karachi, and from there he retreated towards Babylon. So this is the full map of Alexander's invasion of India, and just little points on Alexander's campaign. He crossed the Indus, and Raja Ambhi of Takshashila, he actually surrendered his kingdom to Alexander. And Alexander stayed in Takshashila for a few days, offered sacrifices, and then proceeded to attack Porus, the king who ruled the areas between Jhelum and Chenab. He defeated Porus at a place near Jalalpur, which is in Pakistan, Pakistan's Punjab province, and proceeded from there towards Chenab, crossed the Chenab River, the Ravi River, and subdued all the tribes who resided in the region. However, at the banks of Bias, his soldiers rebelled. They were too exhausted, and they didn't like facing these elephants. And there were about 3,000, around 3,000 elephants of the Nanda Empire, which ruled the area just beyond Bias. So his soldiers rebelled, and Alexander had to march back towards Jhelum, where Porus and few other kings had constructed 800 boats of various kinds so that he could uh, go towards his destination. And going down south, he further conquered areas of Multan and Sindh, and he then left India in about 325 BC via the Gedrosian desert, the desert of Balochistan, from where he retreated towards Babylon. Now, we know the political situation of India after Alexander's retreat. Alexander did conquer India militarily, but after his retreat, there was trouble, big trouble, because Ambhi, he appointed governors who were Indians. So Ambhi was ruling areas between Indus and Jhelum. Porus was ruling Jhelum and Beas, and King of Kashmir was ruling other areas or whatever was left. And he appointed a person called Philip. Philip has been called the son of Makhatas, and he was given governorship of Takshashila to keep a close watch on both Porus and Ambhi. So, in fact, Porus and Ambhi both reported to Philip, and could see this map where we have areas of Takshashila, Gandhar. This is Alexander's uh, just after Alexander's retreat, and he had created few cities in India while he was here. So we have Alexander in the Caucasus. We have Alexandria in Arcosia, which is in Kandahar, and modern Kandahar has been founded by Alexander himself. And we have then Alexander on the Indus, and then somewhere near Karachi we have another Alexandria. And turning towards east, we could clearly see Gandhara, we could see Takshashila, and all the five rivers of the Punjab. We could see Sangala, which is the area of Sialkot. And two more important cities we could see, the Bukafela and Nikaya. Now, Bukafela was the beloved horse of Alexander, who he rode him for since he was a child. And Bukafela, at around 29 years of age, he died uh, in the battle of Hydaspes River against Porus. And to honor his contribution, Alexander founded a city of uh, called Bukafela. And this city, in the next few centuries, grew into a major trading city, and we could see the reference to this city in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, and where it has been mentioned as a great trading city. Alexander also founded a city called Nicaea. Now, Nicaea is after the Greek goddess of victory, and it was founded on the battlefield where Alexander defeated Porus. But unfortunately, this city has not yet been found. So this is the cities of Alexanders of India, and the total, and what kind of cities were there when Alexander retreated toward Persia. So Indian counterattacks, and he had so much difficulty of controlling the regions, because if he went from point A to point B in India, point A rebelled, so he had to come back again. So it was very difficult to control the rebellious nature of Indians of those days. And Indians of those days they were freedom loving people. They didn't like these foreign people coming and ruling over them. So, and they would use any means, violent means, to remove these foreigners from their country. And Alexander actually administered the regions of India in a very different way. Normally he would conquer a city in Persia or somewhere else, and he will appoint a Greek governor with a Persian subordinate who will rule after Alexander. But in India, he had to divide the country, the regions conquered by him, into six satrapies. So, of the three western satrapies, that is west of Indus, you had Pithon, who was a governor appointed by Alexander, and he was ruling over Sindh. Nicanor was posted as a governor of a region called India west of Indus, which was a region west of the Indus River. And we have seen Philip, the son of Makhatas, who was posted at Takshashila. But on the east side, we've seen the western side where he had appointed Greek governors, but on the east side of the Indus, he could not proceed to appoint Greek governors. And he had Ambhi, Porus, and the king of Kashmir who were ruling these areas in his name, but they were reporting to Philip, who was told to keep a close eye on all these kings. And again, but these were not enough to control the rebellious natures of Indians. So first, Ashvanayas, or the Aspasoi. Now this was a tribe which Alexander conquered, and they used to live in the region of northern Pakistan and southern and eastern Afghanistan. And Alexander conquered them and went away, appointed his own governor, who was also called Nicanor. And while Alexander was at Chenab River waiting for reinforcements from Persia, these Aspasoi tribe, they rebelled and rose up in rebellion and killed its Greek governor. So Alexander could not himself go there to crush this rebellion, but he sent an Indian whose name is recorded at Sasigupta or Sisikotis, and Sisikotis or Shashigupta was the Indian agent of Greek imperialism in those days, and for the last 2500 years in Indian history, we have seen many individuals like Shashigupta who helped invaders for their petty causes. So Alexander appointed Shashigupta, gave him a part of his army, and Shashigupta crushed this rebellion of Aspasoi or the Ashvanayas. Again, we have seen the Philip, son of Makhatas. He was assassinated by Indian mercenary troops. So while Alexander was retreating, he appointed Philip as the overlordship, as the governor of Takshashila, and told him to just keep a lookout on whatever happenings were there in country. But Philip was killed by his own Indian mercenary troops. Aryan, the great Greco-Roman writer, he writes in the second century AD saying that Philip was killed because of the jealousy between Macedonian and Greek troops. But whatever, Philip was gone. He was killed, and this led to a chain the command issues in the Greek military, because there was nobody who was as experienced as Philip, who could look after these regions, and Alexander himself could not come back because he was far away from the action. So when he got the news that Philip has been assassinated, he sent a letter to Ambhi requesting him to govern these areas until he could send a satrap of his own. But that satrap was never sent. Now we have now, but the thing is that who was leading these rebellions? Who was leading these mercenary soldiers? And we get a hint of this, and I'll just share at least three quotes by a Roman historian named Justin, writing in the second century AD, and he says that, and I quote here: India, after Alexander's death, as if the yoke of servitude had shaken off its neck, had put its perfects to death. Chandragupta was the leader who achieved its freedom. So here we have the Chandragupta is of course Chandragupta. So because the Greeks called him by that name. So here we have the clear reference that we have spoken about the assassination of first Nicanor and then Philip. And these things have been written by Justin, and he says that it was Sandrakotas or Chandragupta who was the leader of these rebellious or mutinous troops, and and he was the leader who achieved the freedom of its mother country. Another quote by Justin, which says that, and I quote it here: for having offended Alexander by the boldness of speech and orders been given to kill him, Sandrakotas ran away, and while resting near a tree, a lion of great size licked the sweat which was coming from his forehead, and after gently waking him, left him. So, as you know, Chandragupta was in Takshashila. He was a student there, and Alexander also resided in Takshashila for a few days. And it would not have been too difficult for Chandragupta to possibly meet Alexander, because Plutarch says that Chandragupta, when he was young, he had seen Alexander. So it would not have been difficult for Chandragupta to meet such a great general of those times, Alexander, and he may have said something to him for which he the orders were given to kill him, and he ran away from there and escaped. So this is what Justin says here. Another quote by Justin is that sometimes after, as he was going to war against the Greeks, a wild elephant of great size tamed down to gentleness, took him on his back, and became a guide in war. So we have these quotes by Justin, which quite clearly confirms who the leader of this rebellion against Greek was. And if you remove things like a great lion and some of these things, you could clearly gauge out the situation of political situation of India, of northwestern India, is those days where these troops under Chandragupta were removing the tall poppies of Greek imperialism. And Chandragupta's youthful imagination was already stirred by what was happening around him. He must have seen reports of hundreds of thousands of people who were slaughtered by the Greek troops. The Greeks did not differentiate between man, woman, old or infirm, even the kids, and they killed them all. Hundreds of thousands more were taken back as slaves. So he was about what, 18, 19 years old at that time, Chandragupta, and after completion of his studies, his immediate task was the liberation of his country against the yoke of Greek subjugation. And he was associated in this task by his guru Chanakya. And Chanakya says in Arthashastra that foreign rule is the worst form of exploitation, where the conqueror who subdues a country by violence, oppresses it by overtaxation and exactions, and drains it of its wealth. So this is Kautilya, who abhors foreign rule and doesn't like it. And he says that foreign rulers will not do much for you. They'll just conquer you, and they will they will have taxes from you, and they will send it to their own country. They will not do anything good for you. So this was what Kautilya had to say about foreign rule or foreign occupation of the country. And taken all together, all the comments of Justin and other thing, it was Chandragupta who was the hero of this war of independence, and he drew together a band of robbers, as Justin calls him, and disposed these tall poppies of Greek imperialism. Now, who these robbers were? They were not as robbers in the sense that they were runaway soldiers, mercenaries, and any person who could hold arms, anybody. So all kinds of people would have come under Chandragupta's banner and would have made sure that the Greeks leave this country. So in between, by 323 BC, while everything was going there, Alexander died on 10th June 323 BCE, and his generals met. Alexander died without an issue. His son was born after he had died, about 3 or 4 months later. So his generals immediately met and partitioned the whole of empire among themselves. So there were two partitions actually. The one is the Treaty of Babylon, and the partition of Babylon and partition of Triparadissus. So at the Treaty of Babylon, the whole area east of Indus was confirmed as been governed by Porus and Ambhi uh, under on behalf of the Greeks. So these areas east of Indus were under Greek Empire of Alexander. But couple of years later, we see at the partition of Triparadissus, this is a place in Turkey, and the areas east of Indus were no longer a part of Greek Empire. So we can say safely that these areas east of Indus, they had gained independence by 321 BCE. And we have this small map on the Treaty of Babylon, where you could, if I could just magnify it, just east of Indus, we could clearly see Texels and Porus here. just on the edge of this map. Taxils was the name given by Greeks to Ambi, and Porus was also there. So these guys were confirmed that they were the governors of these regions, and all of these other regions were governed by Alexander's generals. So after these rebellions which were taking place under Chandragupta, where they were killing off the Greek generals and their armies, uh, Greeks felt very insecure, and we have reason to believe that Pithon and Eudemus, who were appointed generals by Alexander, they left the country by 317 BCE to participate in the Diadochi Wars. These were wars which were taking place between Alexander's generals and people like Seleucus, even Ptolemy, and others were participating in this battle. And these small governors like Pithon and Eudemus, they left to help their respective masters there. And Eudemus, as the per the Greek accounts, he actually assassinated Porus for his elephants, and 120 elephants he took away from Porus after assassinating him, and he went away to Persia to join various generals. And Pithon died in about 313 BC at the siege of Gaza. And since there were no Greek representative left in India after them, and what happened during that time, that these kingdoms who had opposed Alexander, uh, they had exhausted their entire manpower. Even their women were fighting against the Greek soldiers, and they had become so weak after Alexander left that it was very easy for Chandragupta to conquer them. Whether he did it through diplomacy or military means, that is entirely separate. But these states were made part of Chandragupta's growing kingdom. And which brings us to the end of this part. Next part, we will talk about, this is a huge this Chandragupta, this his life is huge. And the next part we will talk about the main action which happens on the other side of the Ganges, and we'll talk about Chandragupta's conquest of the Nanda Empire, for which he was prepared by Kautilya since he was a kid. And we will talk about that and most likely his further expansions. So this brings me to the end of this part. Please subscribe and like, and you can actually follow me on Twitter to have a tidbits to look at some tidbits on Indian history. And so that is it. I'll be back next week for part 3 of Chandragupta's conquest of the Nandas or the Magadha. Thank you so much.